And this is a quickie side note. 2 days after Star Trek Day, that that the next fan film series will be connected to the Adam M. Brown series, Cohnirri Space. That'll be our next fan film, well, miniseries thing. With the first book has the equivalent of 3 movies in it. It's that long, and 3 movies or miniseries. Yeah, about that. Also, it plays a lot like Star Trek. We're looking over the screenplay yesterday of the first one, and yeah, it's in the DNA. In 1984, it was one of my first stories, and it was very much like Star Trek. It was the original title was in fact ripping off Space: The Final Frontier, and then it was changed to Planet Com, and then Distant Cousins in the 90s. It was briefly Plantcom, but yeah, using alien names didn't work so much. The series had a resurgence in storybook form on Amazon. It's one of the first storybook things in the 2010s, 2019 or so. There have been versions of the story used in the Star Trek parodies and the Transformer parodies. So versions of it have appeared along with the Starcrackers, which became Space Vanguards. In the 1990s, Starcrackers and Distant Cousins were done at the same time. That writing club thing slash fan film thing was done at Evergreen in the 90s, and same studio. And we had Starcracker stories going on one side, and on the other side we had Distant Cousins stories going on. And then there was Distant Planets and Distant Journeys were the sequels. With Starcrackers, it was Starcrackers 2, all that stuff. They made a movie of Starcrackers, and it was our first ever movie, really, if you go back and look. The first ever official, unofficial, like we kind of knew what we were doing movie. And yeah, there were adaptations of some of the stuff. Some of the Planetcom was updated as the Planetcom show in 2007, done with G.I. Joes on the set of Transtech, the Transtech series. It's been done. Yeah, this is Distant Cousins, because we're not going to own Starcrackers, but with Starcrackers, which became Space Vanguards. A lot of that became Starship locations. So we've already done it. If we did it again, it would seem redundant, because you'd go back and say, like, wait a minute, Destinations and Legacy, and even the earlier seasons before that, even Strange Worlds is Starcrackers. So yeah, you've already done it. We do it again. It fits well in that universe. Starcrackers did. So yeah, we just cribbed our own stuff for a lot of it. And why not? So it's interesting that the Starcrackers, like Distant Destinies, done at the same time in the 90s originally. Later went on to be book form by 2015 or so, and then official by 2019. They are storybooks, and there's 2 book series that have. There was a third one, Blessings Deferred, which was Grandma Knapp's story. We did an adaptation of that miniseries last year, 2023. So we did an adaptation of that. It was not well liked by certain family members, even though it was just them reading the book like it was a standalone kiddie show. I don't know why they didn't mind that. Nothing wrong with it. It's just them reading the stories. That's fine. That wouldn't be this, though. This would be a space opera. This is a space opera. Starcraft. Star Trek. It's so close. There's a number of things in it that yeah, we didn't realize were cliche either at the time. They totally were. There's a number of other things. The storybook has been compared to the Expanse TV series, of which I've only seen the pilot and heard other episodes and synopses. I wouldn't say it's the Expanse. No, those books are hard science fiction, a little different. They tend to be that. Granted, there are hard science fiction elements in in this series, but it's nothing like The Expanse. I'd say it's more like the Orville. A lot of the Orville seems like this in Cohnirri Space, because they liked it too when they did the Orville. So Orville Season 3 is essentially a nod to Cohnirri Space and Starship locations. So yeah, why not? We even did an homage in Starship locations to Distant Destinies. We did an episode called Distant Destinies where we find this bioship kind of thing headed for a planet that's similar to Earth. It's a duplicate Earth that's been devastated by a war, and it was like, oh, we've kind of we've done that. Yeah, so this could be a spin-off of that easily. This could be that planet and how they did Starfleet, which is reminiscent of, yes, Sigma Iosha from the classic Trek, but its own thing. It's kind of its own thing. It would have that element. I tended to have the ships and crews and things be more over the top and larger until it was. It also has remnants of Robotech and Star Blazers in that we have a robotic race in there, and you have some mecha, but not much. You have mecha people, I guess. But you have sort of a hybrid bug lizard queen lady, and her sisters that are in it. It's not like Dune, certainly. I'd say it'd be more like Spellsinger than Dune. It's more wacky in parts. It doesn't intend to be, but it's light-hearted. The themes in it are not. It's kind of all over the place. It's more like Alan Dean Foster than it is Frank Herbert, certainly. It's more like that, yeah. Although Dune got pretty weird later on. And yeah, of the first book or season, it would only make sense to do the first book. The other ones go off on a tangent. Each book is set 10 years after the other one. It would be really, really strange to take off and do the whole thing and redress characters and age them up each season. No, you don't need to do that. Just do book one. Because comparable to the Dune saga, the first Dune book is a movie 1 and 2, the current movie, or a miniseries on its own. So, in that sense, and other than that, it's nothing like Dune. There's no sandworms. There's no desert planet. It's a little like Star Wars too, but only in the sense of what it's doing. Star Wars and the Orville, the ships tend to be very small scaled in some cases, especially if they're freighters or fighter ships or something. But if they're large scale, if they're like Star Destroyers and cruisers and stuff like that, then they're bigger. The Millennium Falcon is no bigger than the Defiant, in the two different shows. It's so the Defiant's a tad bigger than the Millennium Falcon, but not by much. So you have and you've got the hero ship, which isn't introduced in the storybooks until technically the third act. It shows up, gets launched, and then gets attacked by pirates. So there we go. Because the first two acts aren't about the Tom Cassins and his crew. The first two acts are about his father and his crew. So it's a generational story that they give to the next generation about aliens and contact and stuff like that. So it's an interesting first act there. I'd worked on the script yesterday, and I'll work on for the second two acts today and the script's going to be very on the fly. I don't know how to, considering it's my stuff. It's Cohnirri Space, Distant Destinies. You don't need to scale up the models to be as big as they are in the story. It doesn't. That's totally not necessary. Well, let's make it the size of the SDF-1. It doesn't have to be that big. It throws it off. It's hard to film that particular model. You can have a model in it, but it would be the mothership, I would think. But yeah. So, still not floating the idea. Still not sure about floating the idea that it's a spin-off of Star Trek Legacy, and the Starship location is a story, and it's back into Star Trek again, or whether it's its own thing. It probably is a Star Trek story because it really kind of was. So then you don't need to worry about the lore so much and the cliches in it, because you can say, oh, it's Star Trek. Also, it gives you more. I mean, you could call it that it's not Star Trek, but it's kind of Star Trek. I don't know how you do the. I don't know how you do the bug people. Probably Star Trek Playmates figures. Did Playmates make any bug people? You just get some. Yeah, you don't need to worry about that so much. I'm sure there's some kind of toy that'll pass for that. They'd all be copyrighted toys anyway, so it doesn't matter. You can make them bug transformers, and then that opens another can of worms into bug transformers. They're like antagonist would probably work. Get a bunch of her. Yeah, there you go. A transformer that looks like an ant. Get about 5 of those. Yeah. Work. So you have actually that kind of would work. There's toys out there that look like that though. You don't need to shop around and find cheap ones. But there was going to be a Carta thing, but we haven't thought of anything. So doing Cohnirri Space makes sense to do that first, just because it's there. It's easily transferable to a script. It turns out it's not that hard. And it follows an episodic pattern, serialized, and it's like a Star Trek adventure, space adventure thing. And it's sort of a prequel to the other stuff, but it's not. It's a sequel to Star Trek: The Legacy Distant Destinies. It's a sequel to that. It's what happened to them afterward. What happened to this planet we left behind? How did they evolve? So the year the story takes place is allegedly in the 2480s. So maybe this story takes place 78 years after Star Trek Legacy, and the crew is completely different. Kind of interesting. Let's jump 80 years into the future and do that. Either that, or you go back to the old dates, which was the 2380s, and you set it about 60 years before Picard and crew during the Lost Years Star Trek. If you want to make it Star Trek, it fits. It fits. The Endeavor, the mothership, the regular ship, the Endeavor, is smaller than the Enterprise. It's probably roughly the size of the. Maybe it's about the same size as the classic Enterprise. It's a little smaller. Yeah, it's like a Miranda class or something. Yeah. There's a starship called the California in it because Lower Decks was thinking, of our story, and they did a Miranda class looking kind of ship in it. Although the description in the book is that it's cylindrical and it looks like the David Weber ship / ships from that series, the Honor Harrington series. They're not intentionally, it's just that they kind of look like that. Because I figured, well, modular cylindrical things are what the space station looks like, so I figured it looks like the space station. But yeah. But yeah. And interestingly enough, the Trump administration ripped off the name of the space group that flies around, the Space Forces. The story predates all of that. They were called Space Forces going back to 1993. You just apparently read my stuff too. Great. To be remembered for having, the story having been remembered for that Trump read Cohnirri Space. Great. And said, Space Forces, that's a good idea. Like, no, it's not. It isn't really. It's just the Federation. It's the Union and the Orville. Yeah. Well, we have the Space Forces now, so there you go. We have the Space Forces. It's kind of funny that the main protagonist / antagonistic character hero guy is a parody of a megalomaniacal oligarch guy, and he's clearly supposed to be. He's not Elon Musk, but he kind of acts like him. It's not an homage to Elon Musk. It's supposed to be the guy before Elon Musk in the story, because it's actually from the 90s. It'd be probably Ted Turner. It's his kids go out in space and do stuff. Yeah, it's like the 90s. It's like CNN and stuff. It's before Rupert Murdoch ruined it, and then along came Elon Musk, who ruined it more. It's not supposed to be them. But people will think it's them. And there's a president who's a flake who gets trapped on a ship, and then things happen to him and stuff. Is like, in that case, a former president is like, it's very topical, and I didn't intend it to be. It's supposed to be somebody else. It's supposed to be the Cillian Henry Barrister who got trapped on this planet, and he's and like in Patterns of Force, he's supposed to be captured, and something horrible happens to him. But yeah, so yeah, that's who it's supposed to be. Yeah, all of the characters in it are archetypes of the Pine Hill people and Evergreen people. They seem to be, yeah, and their descendants. So it fits in with Star Trek really well if you wanted to just do that. If you wanted to just say, okay, this is a new Star Trek series, fan film series, taking place 80 years after the 2040s, but not way off in the distant future like Discovery. The 2480s. Yeah. Or you probably could get away with having it be the 2407 period if you really wanted to. You just have to change the parameters so that the devastated planet is the Earth, and Starfleet helped them rebuild it, which also would work too. It could be during Star Trek Online then, set in 2423 or something. Doesn't matter. The date doesn't matter. Either that, and also the giant pole ships being 5 miles long, that they don't need to be in terms of the story and how it works. A mile-long ship is pretty big. It's pretty big, pretty darn big. It doesn't need to be 5 miles long. It doesn't need to be 25 miles long. Because if they end up doing season 2, the humans get a hold of one and they use it to go batter an alien planet that they don't like. That they're bad guys there. It makes sense that it's a Star Destroyer type of giant ship type of Dominion vessel or whatever. But yeah, it doesn't make sense if it's the one from the other story. In this one, the Arkin and stuff. And yes, there's ancient aliens references in there. That's why they keep not mentioning who they are. Partly because Alien Prometheus kind of ruined that, as well as Ancient Aliens, the TV series, kind of ruined that. It's supposed to be shocking. They discover, the aliens made us, kind of thing. Also, new Battlestar Galactica 2003. Yeah, they kind of did that too. So it's not that shocking, but in 1993 it was shocking because I was like, that's kind of a rewrite of BFG a little bit with Star Trek. The classic 80s one, Galactica 1980. I didn't even realize at the time that's kind of what it was. And it was like, okay, Ancient Aliens and stuff. I was like, but it's not. They don't hardly mention it in this script, this story, all the way through. They hardly bring it up. So they bring it up a little bit, but it fits as a Star Trek story. If they say, okay, it's not that they're ancient aliens and preservers. They have preservers in Star Trek. It's already there. They could just say, this is the planet the preservers seeded, because that's kind of a theme of the their stuff. They seeded, and they're on this other planet. That totally makes sense. In Star Trek, if you go, okay, it's a Star Trek story. Doesn't mean that ancient aliens built pyramids and stuff like that. That's not what that means at all. What they were getting at was the origins of mankind and going to find out what that was and finding a creators and all that. That's kind of what Alien Prometheus was vaguely promising in its ads and its early scene there. Fortunately, they dropped that story about a third of the way through and decided we're not really doing that. We're going to find some aliens that have bioweapons on their planet. It turned out to be different. So Ridley Scott is a fan of Cohnirri Space, which is great. The earlier version, Distant Cousins, he read it. Back in the day in the 90s, you must have read it. Yeah, I never thought that should have been an Alien sequel at all. No, that's something else. Yeah, that's more like your Martian story. Do that. They did The Martians. Yeah, with that guy who did Andy Weir. Yeah, I have nothing to do with Andy Weir's stuff, but he was doing an Artemis one, and they're going to name the moon base after his Artemis books. Come on, dude, really? Then they shouldn't do that over there at NASA. No, he's an author. Come on. But yeah, but that's neither here nor there, and it's not about this. The implications in the story, the backstory of Cohnirri Space was a little biblical and a little weird. In that, like, okay, some of these aliens visited Earth in the time of the Great Flood myths and came there and took the people to this other planet across the galaxy. Well, not that far away, really, 30 light years away or so. And put them on this other planet. And they come back to Earth years later asking for help. That's the premise. That was the premise. We sort of did that with that weird Star Trek Legacy, pre-Legacy, Distant Destinies during Starship Destinations. We did a Distant Destinies episode during the writer's strike, and because I'm not WGA, I wrote a script during the writer's strike, and I filmed it as a fan film, a version of this other story with this. But in this case, one of the generation ships they sent out had been damaged. And the crew was killed, but the AI thought they were still alive. So the Starfleet people would go to the ship to assist the AI and the machines on it, and they have to pretend to be the crew so that they can activate the AI and turn the ship back on and turn the robots back on. They're piloting the ship, and that was a little over a year ago. So. That story. So this could be a follow-up to that. They go to that planet. What happened to them after 80 years? It's actually kind of cool. Let's see what happened. What did they evolve into after they left on the refugee ship? Or what planet sent the refugee ship? Yeah, maybe that planet sends another one to the planet. Yeah, so there's room for anything. Maybe it's just a Star Trek-like fan film series in the tradition of the Orville. Maybe you're basically in the tradition of the Orville. Yeah. So it's a Star Trek. The Orville is basically Star Trek. So it's like that. The Orville's too small. It's like smaller than the Defiant, technically. How does it do all that stuff? Yeah, the shuttle bay, the scale it doesn't make sense on that ship. It would be very flat and have only a few decks. A little bigger than the Defiant. It's supposed to be bigger than the Enterprise, but the way they film it, it's not. It isn't. No, we could go on a tangent about ship size. We don't have to, because just film the story and worry about the special effects later. If the special effects should be fan art of spaceships going by, then that's what it is. It doesn't. Don't worry about the special effects or the space battles or anything like that. I mean, totally do that. The super bridge where the mothership, the command center is. Don't worry about that either, because we can just redress the cathedral set as the bridge and just film it in there. Cathedral, it's bigger than the regular bridge, yeah, just by a little bit, but you can trick the camera and make the audience look. Oh. Yeah, because it's not about bridge space battles and stuff. There are some episodes that are about that, but not the first part of this. It really isn't. Yeah. Yeah, so So by the middle of the first story, by the end of the first story, it becomes evident they're going to do sort of a space battle and stuff. I liked how the storybook version rewrites from 2019, and then were published. I like how they kind of had to explain how the humans were at the same technology as the bug people and the Cohnirri people, because otherwise, how could they defeat the antagonist guy when he comes back? They can defeat him because they're on the same level technology-wise. That was changed from the original. They just had Gaia Spirit. They had Anima Gaia Spirit originally, and they were just like the Argo and Starblazers, or the Yamato, and it's kind of that size actually. The Yamato in Starblazers, being able to defeat whole armies or armadas of things, kind of like the SDF-1 in Robotech and Macross, and of course the Argo is the Yamato. The SDF-1 in Macross being able to defeat millions of enemy ships by blowing up one of Biddles' ships. It's like, come on, millions of ships. So yeah, that's typical of anime sites. There's a lot of anime in this. Certainly the aliens that show up in the beginning are certainly that, and cliched. They're grays. They're grays and dark grays. That's literally what they are, lit grays and dark grays. They're grays. So we get to see like aliens walking around, but they're just conversing with each other, which is actually kind of funny. I like that opening scene with the Discover Voyager 2 probe that they've found, probably just adrift in the solar system, and they're just commenting on it in English. Why not? Because they're grays from Zeta Reticuli, but they're not on Zeta Reticuli. They're on Centaurus apparently. But yeah, because that would make more sense. They'd be closer by than tiny little Zeta Reticuli. That's the ship from Aliens. Yeah, so it is. It made sense. Yeah, they're not the aliens from Aliens, so there's a lot of that in there. There's a lot of cliche in there. Oh, they're grays. The mystical space aliens that seeded humanity. We get to meet them. Yay! It's like, that's not that. That's the old premise from back in the day in Star Trek V, which goes back to the God Machine from Star Trek: The Motion Picture. If you punch a hole in the universe and they're staring back at you as the face of God, it's not that exciting, really. Where do you go from there? Then there's the demigods like the Q, and it's very comic booky. You have the comic book gods as well. So yeah, you kind of can't. You're open to whatever. This is sort of it could work. It's totally feasible that it could work, and that's awesome. So go to it. Do a Cohnirri space. You can just call it Cohnirri Space, a Star Trek fan film. The Adventures of the Starship Endeavour, which was one of the fanzines back then. That's what it was. Before Starship Excalibur, actually. And they disbanded the Star Trek Excalibur. Excalibur. And at the same time, and then a little later, Starship Chimera, which became Starship Locations. Although we were calling it Starship Locations before then. But all that minutia doesn't matter. The point is a generational story where the characters go on a space mission, finding the space refugees from a distant planet that come to visit an Earth-like planet and learn about their origins, sort of. But mainly have space adventures. It was not necessarily the origins and stuff. It really wasn't. The story was the human adventure continues, kind of Star Trek stuff. It wasn't about the origins. It really wasn't. It's cliched for one thing, and it doesn't need to. That's the irony of the whole thing. Everyone's done it to death now since the original premise. The History Channel kind of ruined it because they expect George Deskalios to show up in this story as the main bad guy dude with his hair all going like, ancient aliens, it's real. It's like, oh God. But no, we weren't doing that. We thought of this in the 90s. We thought we were being original, and we weren't. This thing is DNA, it's Star Trek, it's ancient aliens, it's space. It's what it always was. Yeah, just embrace it, I guess. But yeah, but yeah, it's like, okay, embrace the science fiction-y wackiness of it, and just say, okay, that's what it is. It's not quite as funny as the Orville. It's not supposed to be. It's not really a comedy either. It just has some elements that are comedy. It's just sci-fi. I'd say it's less moody than The Expanse. No, it's not The Expanse we were ripping. No. We weren't ripping off David Weber either. It's just the ships kind of looked like him a little bit. Because they decided, let's make a ship look like it's a missile, basically. Even though you're in space, you don't need your ships to look like a missile. The ships can look like a box because you're in space. The gravity is very, very light unless you hit a planet. Granted, ships that have to land would have to be aerodynamic, but not ships that are just out in space. There's any number of sci-fi things that are cliches we thought were original. Of course, the original story was written when I was 13, 14, and then 16. I didn't know what I was doing. Starcrackers was the first attempt to make something interesting out of that. So yeah, it's fun. So Cohnirri space. Book 1 only, because like the Dune saga, where they've tried to redo. They keep going back to the Dune saga because they've tried to redo that first story like 4 times. And the most recent one is very close, but it is an adaptation. It is different. It took them 2 long movies to finish that one, elements of that one book and get them in the can, whereas this may take 3. So that's kind of ambitious. So mini-series, block it into episodes, and shoot it. That was 307 odd pages without double spacing. But then when you put in the double spacing, it's going to be longer. Yeah, so it already is the length of a whole season of something. But yeah, we wouldn't go on to the other books just because book 1 is the nutshell of everything that's going to be in the other books. The other ones expand on book 1, so book 1, then you're done for a while. Yeah. So no, it's not like Dune. It's the world building is though just as expansive as Dune. The world building is ridiculous. There's all the different ships and things. I don't know how we're gonna do that, but we'll worry about that later. Yeah, because really the nutshell of the story is a human adventure where they discover our cousins who were taken off the Earth a long time ago. Yeah, it's like Galactica type of thing. But before Galactica, actually New BSG was set before the events of old BSG, technically. They go to an Earth that's prehistoric. At the very, very end in the twist. It's like, it's not even, that's kind of weird. So that was, New BSG from the 2000s was a prequel to BSG. Presumably they show up later as other people. And then Galactica 1980 starts. And Galactica was a ripoff of Star Wars. And Star Wars was a ripoff of Dune. Well, and the Picard show as well. So Star Trek also ripped off Dune and some video games. There was even a game called Destinies. And no, we had no relation to that at all. It wasn't even similar. It had world building that was kind of vaguely similar, but no, it wasn't that. It wasn't us. It wasn't us. We had nothing to do with it. They were just cribbing from our stuff and other people. Everybody's been cribbing from Frank Herbert's Dune for years. Thankfully, there are no space of. There's. What's weird is it was before the internet when the stories were written, so they kind of don't reference it so much. Now the internet's a big deal, but it's not referenced very much. It's like it didn't exist in that timeline. They had something else, some other hypercommunication or whatever they call it. Or whatever. It's also interesting that, well, I was thinking like, oh, there's no like secret psychic alien witches, but actually there are. That would be later on. There are, yeah, there's secret alien witches. Yeah, alien bad guy / good guys. There are, so, but they're not like the Bene Gesserit from Dune, exactly. They literally are psychic in Dune, and they aren't really in the Dragians. Yeah, they're, what they are is they've tuned in so well to the human mind, because they're like humanoids, that they've figured out how to mimic it and therefore kind of read it. It's kind of like psychic, but it's using science. It's not really magic. They're using science. Well, Arthur C. Clarke, any science is sufficiently advanced science is indistinguishable from magic. I've said that a number of times in the story. Also, Schrodinger's cat and all that. And maybe they're using that whole quantum particle twin thing, but they can do it in their heads because they're real smart. Now, maybe they're just figuring, okay, I can tell what this guy's thinking merely because the quanta of their mind is limited that they can tell. This is kind of mind reading, but with science. That's what they're doing. Also, you have those bug things. Probably mostly the Letomac. The names aren't that hard to say. And later on, there's the Daragrai who decimate their own planet to get away from the human mothership. I guess their planet wasn't very big or something, which is kind of like yeah. I don't think we want to go into book 2 necessarily. It's a Star Trek type of story. It's like Star Trek. It's an homage. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. This is Calicat, the Calicatster, Adam Brown on set of Cohnirri Space, the series, or the season series. Just finished the script, turning the story, the script for the middle of the book into a script, and just now, and we'll do the rest of the story. It was roughly 300 pages, so it's like 100 pages each. A 90-minute movie, 3 90-minute movies in there. As I said before in the previous commentary, you don't need to do the other books in the series. It would take far too long to even complete. That'd just be nuts. Just 7 seasons. No, we're not going to do that. 1 season of it, we'll see what happens. 1 season is 1 book. That's kind of what it was back then too. And if you're looking back to the original PlanetCom, this would essentially be up to the part where they go to the first section is the Battle of the Comans and all that, and that stuff from the 2007 one. It's the other ones. It's the initial stuff that was going on, the prequel stuff from the other story. And there was now included, so it's not a prequel anymore. It's just part of it. And then the story about the Mars attack and the space mission and Battle for Earth kind of thing. And the pirates taking over the Doltal ship, and the Doltal story, basically, the Coman or the Doltal story, and then the third act of the novel is the one where they go to the planet. They go to an alien planet called the Sascom planet originally, because Savicom was the name of it originally. Because Savicom from Star Trek 2, because he said Savic weird, and I thought it would be funny. Yeah, there's so much Star Trek in this. It should just be you could even have, I'm not saying you necessarily should, but you could have at the end of all these stories them making first contact with the Federation at the very end, and have a Federation Starship show up and go like, oh, you're another parallel Earth, and we left you here about 80 years ago, and we come back to check up on you. Yeah. captain of the Enterprise H. Come to look at you, or I, or something. It's the Enterprise G now, so they GH, they'd be the Enterprise H, or I. But I probably won't do that. It doesn't need to be a Star Trek story officially, having gone over the middle part. It plays like one, but it's really its own thing. It's its own sci-fi series. It's the first part of it is their parents and their ancestors, and now it's them. They're commanding ship, the Endeavour, on the space mission. Some elements of it are funky, but I noticed that in the novel version, you kind of fixed it, updated it a bit so it was less funky, and that they have ways to control the bug aliens when they go on their ship, so they kind of mess with them, so they're able to control them. Their minds are more ordered than the human mind, I guess, and they're able to use devices to interfere with them, sort of. Kind of makes sense, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't completely make sense, because neither did Speaker of the Damned. Yeah. But we're not copying that guy at all. The battlefield guy. The characters in this story are clearly a science team that don't have space battle expertise. They're a science team. Now later on they get battle expertise and they become like excellent space warriors. But this is them before that. This is unlike the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies where Kirk and crew are instantly able to do all kinds of stuff as cadets, and then instantly rise in the ranks, which didn't really happen in Starfleet. It just happened in that version. But that's neither here nor there. The history of their people is mentioned. It's kind of an ancient aliens thing. They were taken off the planet by the preservers, or some kind of preservers. They call the clan Adal, and these aliens used them as slave labor. They escaped, kind of like the Egyptians with the Israelites. That's clearly a parable going on there. It's not in the time of the Great Flood necessarily, but could be. They're in their 25th century. They look back on an alien race from 6,300 years ago in the past. They have hyperdrive. They have warp drive. And warp drive is never quite clear even in Star Trek, because at times they can travel from one end of the Federation to the other when the plot needs it to. The plot convenience, you see. Well, and other times not. Technically, if you have warp drive and your ships can go, say you can go to Tau Ceti in 4 days instead of 4 months or 4 years, this is basically warp scale going on there. So if it's just 4 days, you're going to warp 8. No, so you're there in 4 days. Technically, Star Trek seasons should be really long, because they have to get to parts of the galaxy that are thousands of light years away. Yeah, so clearly, it's not that far away. The warp scale is different somehow, or something. Yeah. No, I think I'll do the third book. I'll do the third script tomorrow, and then they'll have the 3 scripts together, and I can parse them into episodes. It'd probably be easier to do if they're individual episodes, which should be fairly easy because they were originally episodes and they were made into a novel. So just put them back as episodes, and totally work. If each one of them is about 90 minutes long, a little over. Well, I would say each one of them is about more than 90 minutes. It's 160 pages each for these 2, when you spread everything out. Instead of, when it goes from 100 pages to 160 pages, that's 160 minutes. 120 minutes is 2 hours. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes for each saga. And that's a little long. That's very long. That's very, very long. It would also depend on whatever exposition you wouldn't necessarily show, and what kind of ships and things you want to have in it. It isn't
necessary to have everything be miles across, as I said in the other commentary. It isn't necessary to do that. You can just be very big and it doesn't need to be miles across. If it's a mile across, you can still put the Endeavor inside it very easily. So yeah, it doesn't need to be humongous. Also, the Kaleen, the alien ship, is not a warship either. It's a big hulking mothership, but it's not a warship. It's a mothership. They use one later to attack the Dark Ride, but it's not what it's for. No. The other guys, and the Greys are in it, but they're a different kind of Greys. They're different group. Yeah. So. Yeah, those all are supposed to be ant, lizard, bug, hybridized bug creatures. Either get some toys that look sort of like them, or make them. We're not making them, so yeah, get some that actually kind of resemble them. There are a couple of insectoid transformers or transformer-like knockoffs that could play the bug aliens. There are also lizard-like the knockoff toys that also could fit the bill, but they can't be dinosaur toys because they have to be kind of bipedal. So they can't just be Jurassic Park toys. That wouldn't work. They have to be bipedal and have opposable thumbs. Otherwise, they wouldn't. Yeah, they're more like the Gorn. Yeah, kind of thing. Yeah. No hybridizing alien species going on. The other option would be to just like use Star Trek aliens from your Playmates collection as them and just say they are. Just okay, this is these Cardassian guys. They could be the bug. They could be the lizard dudes. Okay, Cardassians. The Greys could be the Ferengi or something. The Traveler people or something. But yeah, that universe would change tremendously if they made first contact at the end. That would kind of just change everything entirely. They don't even need to address Book 2. Because yeah, their war would eventually end right there when the Federation would immediately intervene. Yeah, they'd be all, oh yeah, we've been paying attention to you guys. And they come in here and just, that war at Alpha Centauri, we can stop that. Yeah, because if you're become Federation members, then we have to protect you. Yeah, we can prevent that from happening. I don't think I'm going to do that, though. I think the story should stand on its own as a sci-fi story trilogy kind of thing, and people will remember it as that trilogy thing, that Cohnirri space trilogy. I kept comparing it to Dune and mentioned Alistair Reynolds and Revelation Space Casualty because it's not really them. It's not really that. It's not really a race of advanced aliens that tries to kill off humanity. It's not that. No, they're clearly on the same level with them, which is why even the pirates can take over the bad guy mothership, because they're on the same level with them. They know how to do it. It's not that the pirates are extra ruthless. It's that the pirates have the technology from the aliens. They met them before. They just know how to mess with their stuff. Yeah. They're former allies or something. It's not really first contact at all because they know them. Yeah, they know who the Dotal in the story are. They just know them. Like, they're familiar with them. It certainly could be a spin-off of that story with that bioship they found in the episode. It could be a spin-off of that. It could be that planet. The whole thing is that the twist at the end of the whole trilogy is, it was in Star Trek the whole time. Didn't know that. Wow. Probably won't do that just because that's a little obvious. See it coming. Probably not doing that. But the ship and the crew and how they're interacting, the dialogue seems okay too. Even there's nothing. I mean, it's a little sophomore-ish and not official, but they're the space forces of that time period, of that universe. Not now the current our space forces, but they're, and maybe they do that. Maybe they're not as high on protocol. Maybe they're more like a space UN than they are the Navy. They have Navy ranks, but maybe they're more like they're like Star Trek. They're like the Orville or something too. But I think it's an important series that needs to be told. This first book. It is the first book. It's the first one to come out. Came out as Distant Cousins years ago, back in the 2000s. And there was some clarity issues with my last mention of when everything happened, in that all of this stuff was quite a bit done over and over again quite a bit earlier. So in the 90s, there was a resurgence of what was before in the 80s. It goes back to the 80s. The original Planet Com. There's an audiobook version that was put out of the tape, which long since corrupted away, but the audio didn't so much. Some of the audio did like an audio version. There were transcripts and scripts of it. It does go back to 1984, 85, and 86, around the same time as Trans, and Silly Track, and RoboSilly. Goes back that far. So there's like this is that other series that was going on. It predates Starcrackers. When Starcrackers came out in the 90s, we thought to put this one out too. Have the Distant Cousins, Distant Journey, Distant Planet. Planets and Distant Journeys. This was back when my closest sibling, my sister, wanted to be in it and contributed to Distant Journeys. Book 3, the character of Rose Anderson is basically one of her characters. It's running around fighting bad guys and stuff. I was just kind of thinking of Xena Warrior Princess, but in space. But yeah, that character is from book 7. So book 6 and 7. If they went on to do the other books, but I don't think we're going to do that. One is enough. A trilogy of massive, long, over 2-hour movies is enough for the rest of the year, I think, for that series. You don't need to go on and do the whole thing. Just the 3. Just this novel. Yeah, it's sort of like how the first Narnia book is the good one, and the first Dune book is the good one. You know, that's what I was trying to say earlier. So that was the good one. Don't go on to the other ones; they're a little weird. But yeah, you could. They're very similar to this one. Yeah, discover more about their exploration and stuff. But I think the later ones become more of a military space opera in the later ones, and they're not as much fun. Yeah, they're okay, but not as much fun. And then there's that goofy ending where they meet the creator guys at the very end of the finale. They go and meet the space gods, or at least the remains of their planet, which is, yeah. And then it was almost going to be retconned in the 2018, 2019 period, and then we decided, no, we're not going to retcon that. We're not going to redo that. We're different. No. And that's what evolved into that Distant Destiny script. That was thought of over and over again in pieces and chunks and other stories. And yeah, that's what that was. That script written during the writer's strike was about that. And the creator ship, bioship thing is discovered. But they're all dead, apparently. Just like on the planet in the story. But yeah, that story isn't the creator of the world. It's just an alien group that happened to be on a ship. Yeah, they cop out. It's an alien ship. So the other ones were all, one after the other in the 90s. And at the same time as Starcrackers, the series. So there was a book series. I don't know if that's clear. But after Planetcom, there was a serious effort to write good book script versions of these stories around the same time as On Location 2, and to come up with our journal entry, come up with a remake from the co-authorship of Brown Yeager or Cat and Cards. Doing the Starcrackers was also this, and they had the Starcrackers. There was a pilot, and it was written, and then I went further with it, took it on to series of its own. Had a companion book and episode guide and everything. It ran on for years, for almost like 13 years of these short story things that compiled together, off and on. And During the production of the movie that never quite got finished until 2011, and finally got finished after over a decade. Technically on YouTube in 2014 on YouTube, the Star Crackers. But the Cohnirri Space one never got a proper story like that one. We had many attempts, but never a proper story. Now, the age of action figures Star Trek and all that, we have the technology and the will to do, and the time to do the story, to do it. This story. Why not? Yeah. So, but yeah, the only thing that's going to be off is the female voices are going to be me because they're going to need girls. There just aren't. Could have them, but I just don't. It's not like we could. Yeah, it's not like they're not included. We don't know any that would want to be in their stuff. They keep giving me a scans, and going like, "Oh, what's it about? Is it weird?" And it's like, no. But yeah. I always think that there's some kind of ulterior motive with doing a fan film thing upstairs. I think there must be something to that. It's like, no, I just want to do fan film. But yeah, come up with ideas, but I'm going any further. So yeah, we had other ideas that it's offers for a Transformer thing, and basically nobody wanted to do it, so we're doing this instead. But yeah, nobody wanted to write it. And the story writes itself. It's kind of, it does itself. It's all there. Their characters are going on a space mission. There's 3 acts to the novel. It writes itself. 3 acts to the novel. So yeah, if it's all spread out, 160 roughly times 3. Well, if it was 180 times 3, it'd be 360. Yeah, it would be. But it's 160. So it's it's 360 hours or minutes. 360 minutes. 360 minutes. There's a layout. That's really long. Oh, that's really, really long. That's enough. Story of spaceflight. And if you went back and saw the original stories, this would take you up to the end of Series 1 with Tom Cassins and his crew, the Endeavour, going to the Cat Planet, coming back. That's the end of the last. Yeah, that's part of the season. And it's kind of like Robotech in that you have 3 discrete things in there. Kind of like that. 3 stories going on. And this is they finished the middle chapter. This is all just book 1 too, but it's all book 1. Just book 1. Yeah, it's none of the other one. It's just too long. Do I want to spend the next 3 years doing the rest of the books? Probably not. Yeah. It would take way too long. I mean, it could be done. We did it with the Star Trek stuff, but I don't think I'm gonna do that. After this, I'll do something else. But yeah, although we've pretty much rejected the idea of doing a remake with action figures of Star Crackers, that first story and that season, the first book, because why reinvent that? Oh, it's already done live action. Yeah, there's no reason. And we kind of already done it with Starship locations anyway. We've done it with Star Crackers. I don't think this necessarily is a Star Trek story, though. I think it's just a story in the vein of Star Trek. It's its own thing, but it's in the vein of Star Trek. Because it's also in the vein of Star Blazers and Robotech. So yeah, there's a lot of that in there. But no mecha running around. And then they mention a mecha robot tree thing, but it doesn't really do much. It just sits there. Yeah. So, yeah. Distant Destinies. Cohnirri Space, I guess is what this is called, yeah. And you might think, oh, he just ripped off House of Corinne. No, we did not rip off House of Corinne. But they were probably thinking the same thing we were thinking. Should be House Carino anyway, because if it's Dune, it's Carino. It's the guy's name. I spelled it wrong. What happened is that in the 90s, even though it already existed, in the 90s, the 90s version of that, the Cohnirri, Corinne, was named after Corinne. Not Dune, but there was a girl named Corinne who was a finalist on the Real World, and from the cast, from the church cast, and she was Corinne, and and they just named the alien race after her. Originally, they were called the Archeans. Yeah, and they were the Corinne. But yeah, the names are funky too. You know, originally they were the Coman, the Dominus, the planet Carlotte, the Lady of Carlotte, the Lady of Charlotte, the planet. And then Favala and the other aliens. Some of the names are still in there. There's that curiosity in season 2, in book 2, where there's a Juliana de Vries. There's literally an ex-Jung Swan name in there. There's a sportist Jung Swan name in there. There's a girl that trained at the academy for all of maybe a month. She wasn't there very long. But apparently she had such a vast impact on the 90s version of that story that she has a character named after her in this story. I left it in. That's Julian de Vries. Apparently she had such a vast impact on it. It would have been Lisa Walton, too. She was a contemporary of her. Would have been there, too. Lisa Walton, who later went on to be Church Lady Lisa O'Brien. A different person. But they were both popular. So. It's odd. It's odd that she's in there and not Sandra. Get off. Do you think she would have been in there? Or is she supposed to be Arlene Benton? Sandra? That probably makes sense. Yeah. They was, Arlene Benton is a Mary Sue for his Calicat's mother or something. No, it's Sandra Cato. It's clearly that's who that's supposed to be. Jung Swan. It's very Jung Swan. It has that feel to it. Before the cult was out as a cult. But yes, so it isn't really. It just plays that way. Tom Cassins was named after the Cassins family from the church, apparently, who also knew the Ragsdales. So, I think that's where that comes from. I'm pretty sure. And Burns, Nathan Burns, was an amalgamation of the two Nathans from school from Pine Hill, and somebody that my nephew David went to the rival school across the street knew. Not the guy from not Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. This is before The Simpsons. This was in the 80s in the Planetcom version. Burns. So there were a lot of names that other people changed over to. Even in Starcrackers has that problem. Asloth. The Techite guy Asloth is the alien. Asloth is a gamer character from D&D and other stuff. We didn't know that. We just used him. This is the name. Asloth. Sure, why not? But yeah, I figure it's kind of like how fantasy stories will use orcs and elves and dwarves and things in their fantasy stories. Little people and stuff. They call them dwarves in the story, but it's like so it's kind of like that, or cat people in the story. It's not necessarily Yunsul's not necessarily a Khazinti from Larry Niven, although he certainly acts like one. He's like he totally would fit in Larry Niven's Ringworld and in the Khazinti Wars. And I know they're different, and the Khazinti Wars are different. Although the Khazinti are in Star Trek as well. Emrys and Tiana, or Tabby, as she was called in our version, Tabby. Our Tabby was played by a Denise Crosby action figure. It's funny. She's a Romulan cat. Anyway, in that version. Tabby and Tabby, and then Tabby shows up. Tiana shows up in the finale. And they're together in the same universe. That's anyway. So the Several names were changed because they had to be. And the reason the alien names sound kind of funky is by the time we were doing the novel version and the 2004 novel and then the update in 2015, 2016 to 2019, every alien name had been used. As the Dominus was a castle, apparently. Even Sevicom was a company. Who knew? A lot of them were companies. The Eakins and the Hetrans, all companies. Hetran is a 4chan derivative. I didn't know that at the time, back in the day. So obviously I couldn't use that. I had to come up with weird names like Lithgra and Savarthe and Atrirka, because then it doesn't sound like, well, it still sounds like a drug. But yeah, it's not supposed to. I mean, Lucas did that kind of stuff too. You had Anakin Skywalker and Zabulveda Avenue and things like that. Darth Father, Vader, stuff like that. He's somebody's father. I said that in the theater. That movie was running. Somebody's dad. He's named Darth Vader. Somebody's dad. Don't know who it was. It's pretty obvious. Darth Vader. Yeah, so yeah. It's not funky. Well, so this is the ancient mic. I have 3 mics, and this one was the one that worked the best. I don't know why. I guess the impedance. This is the oldest one. This is the Dottie. This mic. It's a mic that was purchased for a singing mic. It was mine, and it was in a box for many years. And the technology hadn't caught up with it yet. It's actually it's older than the other ones. And now the technology caught up to it. You could use it on the computer mic. It has a very nice sound. Although you need one of those circular the sound pop boards to keep from popping. It's good for like music, but not good for blogging necessarily. I was using it for the blogging to put in the names quickly. Otherwise, it would have taken forever to get through book 3 here. Book 2 and 3. But yes, just the first book. Don't worry about the other ones. First book has an ending, comes to an end. It's fine. Worry about the first book. Everybody in it is in it and does their thing, and it all works out. So, yeah. It is a little awkward that the characters are their ancestors in the first half of the series in the first novel, but that's fine as long as they have a story that they're trying to tell. That's cool. Then you get to see them afterward. It evolves into a ship story in the middle, the end of the first story, and then this one. Action kind of ship story. It's a little goofy, but then they aren't really after the ancient origins of mankind thing anyway, so they're just sort of saying like, oh, that's interesting, the aliens have that too. Yeah. I take it that in the story, actually, it's a parallel Earth, where it's not this Earth, it's some other Earth, where it's sort of like an Elseworld saga kind of story. Because even Star Trek doesn't match with this real Earth. Because, yeah, it doesn't at all. That's the Cohnirri space. Should we keep the name Cohnirri space? Probably. Not Carino, obviously. Actually, the Dune prequel books are considered less cool than the originals. They're done by Herbert's son and some other guy. Aren't considered part of it. So. But yeah, yeah. Behind the scenes of a script, of a screenplay. Yet again. It is September 11th. And I decided to block, just for shits and giggles, to block the what would be if you were going to do this the 100-page scripts for all of the books. Just I'm not going to do it. It's too much. But all the books, all the 7 Destiny novels, all 7 of them, the Cohnirri Space novels, are about 360 pages long, all of them. So about 120 pages each is a typical season, about a third of each book. Yeah, so they're all blocked like they're a series, and it would be like, well, yeah, basically 7 seasons. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do the whole Cohnirri Space series. I think you should probably, there's 21 movies, basically. No, that would take a year, as I said yesterday. And you don't want to do that. Just do the first 2. Maybe the first 3. The first book, basically. The first season. Usually sci-fi shows are canceled in the first season anyway. Do the first book, first season, the first 3 novels as a mini movie series. Then stop there. That's fine. If you went on and were allowed to do book 2 and book 3, another additional 6 movies, you would run into some issues concerning the characters' plots and stories, the demises of some main characters, and the rise of our main character heroes to ridiculous ranks as admirals of pole ships, and one of them steals a planet ship at one point. At that point, by the third book, it kind of goes nuts and does its own thing. It becomes Super Gaia Robotech Space Force thing with a lot of space battles and bug aliens and dinosaur aliens that predated them that control them, and humans and people and aliens and grays and dark grays and all kinds of stuff. The 7th book of which is a sibling story crossed with a niece story. But yeah, and then goes all out. The 7th book is really bizarre. It was rumored that the 7th book, unlike Prometheus, actually has Space Jesus show up. Yes, it does. Yes, I went through the 7th book, and yes, Space Jesus does show up. No, I don't think you should film. I don't think we should do that one. That's just too much. No. That would be 7 seasons in, and it would air the final episode story, and it would probably cause everyone to go, what? And it would also be a cliche because it's Narnia, basically, in space. But it's not a lion, it's a lamb instead. It's an alien. No. It's cliche. I thought it was really cool when I wrote it. And the original story came out in the early 2000s. The 7th book technically was back to the early 2000s. I like that the books, their dates seem to line up with when they were, such that book 1 is in the 80s, so to speak. Book 2 is in the 90s. Book 3 is in the early 2000s. So, yeah. And then by the time you get to book 4, 5, and 6, and 7, you're you're up to, you're getting up to the I think book 4 is the 2010s. Book 5 is the 2020s. Book 6 is the early 2030s. And 7 is the 2030s as well. So, yeah, the 2020s by book 6. Okay, book 6. But I see no reason to do that alone, just myself doing that. It would just be too much to do, that entire thing. I think just that one story is, that one saga is fine. Do book 1 and see what it looks like. And if book 1 is cool, then do book 2. But do book 1. It's the trilogy that book 1. Because once that's all said and done, if you did 21 of them after a year, you would have the Cohnirri Space saga done as a miniseries, more so than Foundation did, more so than Halo did, more so than Doom did, and Calicat would definitely be known everywhere. It's a weird fan series that came out. Well, I don't think we have enough assets to do that either. So best to do with book 1, where you only have to deal with the parents of the crew and the aliens, and they go on a mission, and it's a very simple story. It's not elevating them to space admiral status yet. They're just captains on ships and stuff, and that's fine. That's more like Star Trek. That's more like as well as Final Yamato. There's a lot of Starblazers in there, a lot of Robotech in there, in the sense that it's character development of characters and triangles and things. It's going on space missions, having a space battle. Although the space battles are different, though. Notice that in book one, they try to use a little bit of science doing the space battles. One of the tactical officers points out, we're in outer space, so shooting at us in a straight line wouldn't make sense. They could just go under us. We go under them. Yeah, something Star Trek doesn't point out either. Yeah, it's like, how would you target like space fighters? Really, technically, in space, you have a mothership that could just send like drone torpedoes out and blow up all the fighters. We wouldn't have fighters. It wouldn't make sense for that to happen. Yeah. A fighter carrier wouldn't make sense in space because you have 3 dimensions and to work with. You're not just in an atmosphere. You're in space. Why would a blockade in the space make any sense? It really wouldn't. In space. Even did that on Star Trek a few times. They had like a blockade. It's like, how would they have a blockade? They've got ships floating in the firmament in space. If they're go around them. Yeah, if you have a ship at one point, another ship at another point. Yeah. But yeah, we have space opera. It is space opera, as long as it's treated as comedy space opera, as a kind of satire comedy of kind of the Peter principle and incompetence of the bureaucracy that's controlling their oligarchy that has foothold on space forces in the story, which is very topical actually for its time. And this was earlier. This was the release of the books was 2019, but these stories go back decades to the 1980s and 90s. They were thinking ahead. So it's a very topical. It kind of works. So yeah, that first book would be awesome to put that out, and then maybe the other 2 after that, and then have the first book would be done. The first 3 movies would be the first. I'm going to work on the teleplay of part 3 of the first book today, and then we'll see what goes from there. Not saying we're going to do all of them. Not saying we're going to immediately do book 2. I'm not saying that. But yeah, it gets weird. It gets not as weird as Dune, but it gets weird. There's a guy who controls a planet ship. I was mentioning that earlier. He controls an entire planet, the planetoid. Sort of like a Vader type of guy, but he's a good guy. Well, he's sort of a good guy. He's sort of not. He's sort of an antagonist, anti-hero, But he's probably got some kind of Cillian-like Q powers, and that's how he's able to do it, because otherwise he can't. He's got powers of some kind. He's a human. He's literally... They also run the gamut in the story of that old myth of the 10% of your brain used thing that they claim was quoted by Einstein, and it wasn't. It's kind of in there. It's like, no, he didn't mean that you don't use your brain. He meant potential energy, the brain. Yeah, like we're only separated by the chimpanzees and the apes by about 1% of the DNA, and that's different from the brain. I mean, it is DNA, but it's different. And if an alien species was that 1% advanced, of us, even, they would be space aliens with hyperdrive and all that. So yeah, so it's kind of addressed in there. Lizards and bug people, and kind of the implication is the Silurian hypothesis, even though at the time I thought it was being original. I hadn't read it. I was just like, oh, what was cool is when I was a kid, Land of the Lost was cool, that show, and they have lizard people, and I just thought, oh, that's cool, lizard people. I'll include those. And the Gorn from Star Trek, I'll include that, because lizard people. And Voyager was in the 90s, but I was already in college. There was a lizard thing in there as well. Lost Civilizations and things. I didn't know that other people had done it when I was a teenager. I didn't know other people had already written about that in the 70s and 80s. I know that. I know science fiction. Also, James Blish, A Case of Conscience. A number of other things. I had read that. Once the History Channel came out with all that Ancient Alien stuff, explored all of that, kind of ruined all of the sneaky plot points that were in the stories in this series. It was like, oh, you guys kind of wrecked it and made it stupid. But it sounded cool originally, but you guys, Tiscalios and Van Daniken and the other guys, you messed with it. It was not cool anymore. Now it's just like, oh, that's not clever anymore if a million people have done it. So best to just say that the series has ancient alien type aliens and has other humans that were taken from Earth, and that other aliens were also taken from Earth, and preservers and that kind of thing, and go from there and just say, okay, that's not the central theme. The central theme may not be that, but ancient aliens. The central theme is hope never dies or something. The central theme is that these guys have a special Gaia spirit that makes them go out into the galaxy and fight for freedom and stuff, like G.I. Joe, but with, would they be G.I. Joe figures in this story, or would they be Star Trek figures? They probably should be G.I. Joe figures, just because there's more of them, although it doesn't have to be. Then you can have the Star Trek figures be the lizard people and have them be taller. You have them in it, but be the taller ones. It still kind of doesn't match, but does it have to? Also, you have the miles-long ships, and later on planet-sized ships. I don't know how we're going to do that, but as long as it's treated as, okay, yeah, we accept that there's a lot of cliches, and so this is considered a whimsical sci-fi opera, and not necessarily a serious sci-fi opera. It's a whimsical sci-fi opera, akin to Starcrackers. Not as funny and jokey as Starcrackers, but it's akin to that. So I should say it like that. Okay, it's that's what it is. It's like Starship Locations. And now that Starship Locations has all the rights to it, they can do whatever they want. But I wouldn't recommend doing all 7 seasons. Just do the first 2 seasons. It's probably fine. Because it gets weird. Unless it becomes such a treat to do all of them that we just decide to do all of them. But I doubt we're going to do 21 movies in a year. I don't think that. Just do the first 3 and see what happens. See if the fans of the channel like it. You might want to have another channel for just Cohnirri space, if that's the case. But really, it's the main channel and the main fan films anyway. So it's not a Star Trek story. It's just Starship Locations presents this story. So it's not a, so it's a KTS production. A little bit of Queen Bee in there. So do that. Space Jesus. We had the possessor, the Dryden, and the Dryden that later on in season books 5, 6, and 7, that they are Nephilim, basically. The giants of renown. We thought that was original too. The ancient aliens ruined it. That'd be really cool. We could see the Nephilim. They're barely mentioned in the Bible. It'd be fun to do that. We did get a chance to do that, though. We did Planet of the Fallen Ones, based on the Colavito stories about the Nephilim, and that group. So we did that in Starship Locations. So we've already kind of done Book 7. So we kind of don't need to do Book 7, because we've already done it. Kind of. Although Colavito's was a different take on it entirely than this one. It was spoofing ancient aliens and interviewing the people and stuff in there. It's different. Yeah, it's the way he did what made it cliche. And it's sort of like how some of the elements of Dune. I keep going back to Dune because it's also an epic. Some of that, and it inspired everybody. The idea of certain world building and themes. That idea is really cool. The world building is really cool in this. So I do like the world building. It is Star Trek like, but we don't need a scene where they encounter the Federation. I think that would throw things off. Although that would be a cop out, a nice way out for season 2 if they decide to cancel it. They might say like, well, okay, just have the Starfleet show up. The end. Oh, we're making first contact with you. We're the Starship Enterprise. Contact with you. It's like, oh, okay. The end. It was a Star Trek story the entire time. Who knew? Yeah. But as a new sci-fi series, yeah, it's a new sci-fi series that has so much like going on that kind of doesn't add up. That even in the DNA of it from the very beginning, it's like we were just inadvertently copying other people. Whereas when we did the original Silly Trek at the same time, and then later on the Starship Locations, the Star Trek people were copying us. And this one, it's the other way around. We were copying them without even knowing it. Because a lot of these stories do play like I was like 16 or 17 when I wrote it, especially book 1. But I think it actually works, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, works better than when James Cameron takes his Avatar stories and does those. They're a little schmaltzy and silly. Well, there's a little schmaltzy here too, so I'll say that. But definitely better than Zack Snyder with Rebel Moon, whereas I'm going to do my version of Star Wars and make it better. See, it's both of those stories, the Avatar, The Last Airbender, which is ripping off The Last Airbender. Avatar, Cameron is ripping off the name, blatantly. But not the story. He's ripping off Thundercats in that case, and Pocahontas. But in the sequel, he's ripping off a teen comedy with teenagers trying to trick each other and stuff. That's literally what the second one is. It's a teen comedy. The bad guy teenagers trick the kid and almost kill him. But no, but they just go, you sneaky scamps. Oh. It was like, okay, that's kind of messed up. Why didn't they get in trouble for that? And then the bad guy shows up and there's like a wailing message thing that doesn't really work. Star Trek 4 did it better. Yeah, it was way better in Star Trek 4. They were ripping off Star Trek 4 in the Avatar 2. They did it way better. They just said, okay, the Klingon bird of prey hovers over the whaling ship to rescue the whale. The whaling ship is like, oh crap, and turns around and runs away. Because it would. Because it's a space, an alien ship. It doesn't know what it is. That's better than having a space battle on water. Yeah, so Rebel Moon, like Battlefield Earth, which is a funnier movie. Battlefield Earth is a funnier movie because it's so ham-fisted. And I remember the original Battlefield Earth book and the decology that was the Invasion Earth, the prequels. They were all very bad and schmaltzy. This is the Cal Cat Brown version of the Jack McKinney Robotech novels, as if they had 65 episodes of an animated series as books. That's basically what it is. It's 21 books. You take the 21 and multiply it by 3, you end up with a lot more. A lot more. 21 multiplied by 3. And if you multiply it by 6, it's even longer than that. So don't do that. There's some goofy stuff. Even the edits yesterday, I took some lines out that were Star Trek lines that were in there. Even now, they okay, but no. There were also lines that were suggestive. I suppose there'll be controversy later on, but 3 of the protagonists in the story are Latin characters with American accents. That are the Cervantes brothers, and they're sort of like just amalgamations of David and his friend. David's friend passed. Nephew, David and his friend, and that's what they're and other people, and they're sort of amalgamated together as these 3 characters. One of them is a businessman that's super rich and kind of like a mobster guy. The other guy is a computer hacker who is apparently a demigod and can control planets later. The other guy is a rebel, Antonio the Rebel, who wants to play like he's a rebel mobster that terrorist bad guy. It's not that they all are; it's that the one guy is. So it's like, but it's topical because you can have those characters do their thing and say like, okay, there's no moral quandary of those two. I mean, the main character of Tom Cassins becomes a divorced man because he's fooling around. His backstory is he's divorced. They have the Christian Bright characters. You have Donald Benton and Arlene Benton, who become famous in the story. They're not modeled after any of us. It's just a coincidence. The Arlene Benton character is taken after a Jung Swan person. And I think the other one is too. Donald is a martial arts Jung Swan person. Put him on a ship. Why not? But Char and Burns, I mentioned that earlier. David might have been cribbing from The Simpsons actually later on, but yeah, but didn't mean to. Just thought the name sounded cool. Kind of like how Marx Cards was using names from Pine Hill. It sounded cool. Like one of his short stories included Mr. Toretto in there, just because sure, might get Toretto in there. It's kind of like that. Yeah, and there's DeVries. There's a Jung Swan. Julie DeVries, who was in the story briefly as a helm officer, and then I think they named a ship after her for some reason. She becomes famous in the story. I think maybe they changed it though. They might have changed it. We've got some other characters and Arlene Benton is a character. Her backstory, instead of being German like Sandra Kato's, it's the Sandra Kato thing. That's what it is. She's Russian, so she has like. And nowadays, I'm Russian, but no, I can't. Russia. That war going on. Well, maybe she's from one of the Russian states. No, she's from Moscow. She's from Russia. So she's Russian lady. She's supposed to be in the story. And she becomes commander of a giant ship later on. They all become commanders of giant ships because that's how it works in that universe. But yeah, they just they do the Robotech thing. And they say, 70,000 survivors on the Robotech ship. And Rick Hunter somehow becomes the admiral of all space. That's what I'm spoofing. Yeah. As long as it's a spoof. See, that was the problem with the Zack Snyder ones, is they were like the Zack Snyder ones was that if he just played Rebel Moon as a joke, which he wouldn't have done, and said this is a spoof, I'm making fun of Star Wars, like Spaceballs. I'm putting these characters in these situations and having them have ridiculous badass powers that don't really do anything, like arm knives and stuff. Just to say I'm making fun of it. Then it would have been fine. It would have been like, okay, he's making fun. Like it's silly to be sci-fi. Ooh, ah. This story isn't trying to be silly though. It's kind of pretentious. Yeah, Everett and Cassins. Everett's named after David Everett from Murphy's School. The Admiral guy. Slayton is 3 different people. Originally it's Mike Slater, who was the co-author of the original Space the Final Frontier in 1984, when we were 13 and 14. Slater, but it's changed to Slayton. He's named after Monique Slayton then, and not Slater. So they changed his name because they had to, because of a movie, an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie that came out. That was called The Last Action Hero, and obviously, that was going to get confused for that, and everybody was going to think, he's spoofing and immediately makes his character stupid. It ruins it. The Schwarzenegger movie ruined it because immediately you think, he's just spoofing Jack Slater from that movie. He's not, but yeah, but I didn't. Didn't realize the connection there. It would be like calling a guy Connor and realizing, Roseanne, that's the Roseanne family and Roseanne. It's kind of like that. If you named a character from Simpson, it would be like The Simpsons. We did catch that. Making Star Crackers in the 1990s, Henderson was going to be called Simpson. And then Schmidt was Simpson. And then we're like, no, The Simpsons. It's a TV show. Everybody's going to think The Simpsons. I'm changing this name to Schmidt. He became Schmidt instead. There's no show with that. So we're good. There were also several other odd names. There was Hatran, which was a computer company or a heating company. That was actually a 4chan. It was early before the internet. Mind you, the stories are before the internet. And the internet would only work around the Earth anyway. The internet wouldn't work in space. Unless there's satellites beaming the internet information. It wouldn't work in space. Yeah, they'd have to have like transmitters to each ship. And the delay would be incredible. So in order for something like a Star Trek to work, they'd have to have some kind of hyper radio that goes faster than light. Because otherwise they would never be able to communicate with other planets. And other ships. There would be a delay. You'd be like, I'm going to contact this guy over there at Saturn, but it'll take 4 hours for me to talk back to him. It'd take forever. You couldn't do a conversation. It wouldn't happen. So there's clearly something else going on. Yeah, you kind of have to do that kind of silly stuff. Kind of have to have a warp drive that works so they can get there in a few days. Otherwise, the story would take 20 years to get anywhere. The Expanse tried that. Only saw the pilot. I would say The Expanse is not comparable to. It's more like the David Weber series, actually, or Harrington. It's more like that. The Expanse, more so than the other stuff. It's not really mine at all. It's similar, but not really. It's trying to be hard science fiction, but it's fine. But I prefer the Star Trek fantasy stuff. I prefer that. Like, oh, okay, I won't explain how this teleporter works. It just does. I won't explain how these. I don't think they have transporters in this universe. These stories, actually, they have warp drive, but I don't think they have transporters. I think they've sussed it out. That would work. I think they do have a disintegrator, but no transporter. Disintegrate somebody at one point. But yeah, because that's what it would do. It would just disintegrate you. We wouldn't be able to get you back together again. It does beg the question that they have transporters, and they're instantaneous, as they seem to imply on Star Trek. The death scene in Star Trek: The Motion Picture could be commuted immediately by putting them back in the pattern buffer and beating them back. No, they just reassemble them. Like, oh, okay. Which is why Dr. McCoy didn't want to be beamed up, and he's going to use molecule spread over space. Because a moment earlier they killed somebody in it, and he was like, "Oh, dang it, transporter! Oh no, Even though he beamed up a bunch of other times, didn't bother. But that time, yeah, which is not good. But there's a bunch of other names in there that are funky. There was consternation. There weren't enough Asian characters, so in book 2 there's some Asian characters. They're a little strange, but they're in it from what I skimmed through. There's I think at one point there's Evergreen's Lori Chu. It's her. She's a space commander from Evergreen. She's just in the story. Oh, about Lori Chu. My goodness. Arlene Benton's not supposed to be mom. Don't worry, Arlene Benton is Sandra. It's not supposed to be the Stone Amanda Stoner either from the church. It's supposed to be. It's who it's supposed to be. From Jungsel. And she's not around anymore, so that's a little weird anyway. But the character can still exist. That's fine. She still exists. She's alive. She just isn't around here. So there's it's a space epic. There's all kinds of stuff going on. There's a Mars scene where they're on Mars. You probably compare it to that Martian movie, but don't, because it's way before that. The books, yes, they came out in 2019, but these stories go back way further than that. I know The Martian came out in 2015, but no, it goes out way further than that. And stories about Mars are fairly generic. You have a story about Mars. There were like 3 of them around the same time. So yeah, it has nothing to do with anybody being trapped on Mars. It's more like, oh, they have a escape shift to leave the planet. They leave. Nobody's trapped there, except for this one guy that. Admiral guy goes crazy, but admirals guys do that. But yeah, they have to escape. Yeah. So then they have alien, bug humanoid bad guys and lizard humanoid bad guys later, and you have that whole thing and the whole and how the lizard humanoids are all males because they figured out how to clone themselves. so they're like the Zentradi more so than they're like the Vorlons in 5, or more like those Klingon like asshole guys in Orville that are only all males, and they male genderize everybody. But I was thinking of I was probably thinking of just making fun of male incels before I knew what the word was. And it'd be funny to have that. And now the female warriors show up and kick their ass. And you're, So how we like that one. So yeah, it might be comparable to the Orville as well, but that's only because Seth MacFarlane read the books. He was familiar with Cohnirri space. That's why. Yeah, those aliens that are acting like that, those lizard dudes, are clearly modeled after the Tatavis in this story. The Tatavis. That's what they are. It's like, oh, the Tatavis. Yeah. They call them something else because copyright, but because I wrote it first. The bug ones are the other ones. Yeah, the Android ones are the other ones. So that's it. Now a little rundown here to book 1 and book 2. But first, just do book 1 because you probably get bored of wanting to do the other one. It doesn't need to all be done. Don't do it all. In fact, don't. Yeah, just the book 1. Three novels. Book 1. In fact, yeah, by the time it gets to book 3, it gets really weird and doesn't work as much. And I wrote it. Yes. There's the oligarchy of the other guys and everything. But yeah, there's some interesting ideas going on in there. Definitely different than the other Starship locations. Anyway. It took 2 days to do part 3 of book 1 here because it's literally twice as long as parts 1 and 2. So it's in effect 2 more in part 1. So, yeah, they do hint at the ancient alien goofy thing, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel thing. It's in there toward the end. It does seem tacked on, though. It seems like they just, when we were writing it, we just decided, oh yeah, I'll throw that in there and say it's the last minute. It's a Christian allegory. It doesn't really work. You can leave it in, but it doesn't really work. I think it works better than that scene they cut out of the Ridley Scott Prometheus movie, which would have been stupid. Space Jesus prevented the aliens from attacking the Earth with xenomorphs 20 years ago. That would have been dumb. 2,000 years ago. That would have been really dumb. Here it's just that the aliens believe that they are cousins to humans and that Earth mythology is similar to theirs. So it's probably more that they've been told this information, whereas it's not exactly what happened to them. That'd be my more cynical grift years later. As I said, that's what's going on. They were told. I was also looking up whether I could acquire off the Amazon roughly 7-inch, 8-inch action figures of gray aliens and insect aliens and just a few of them here and there. And dinosaur aliens. Apparently dinosaur aliens are easy to find. But they're hybrids, so yeah, and action figures that could be manipulated. You could put a bug head on action figures, but it's kind of its own thing. Either that or all of the appearances of the bug aliens are drawings, which would be weird. It'd be kind of like Trans-Tech, the first one we did. I don't think they're going to be drawings. I think they actually have to be action figures doing action, because that would just be... We had that problem years ago, too. 10 years ago. Didn't have that stuff in that form. We don't want to do claymation or something and build bug figures. That's going to be really hard to do. But we're on the precipice, on the cusp of having the ability to do that kind of thing. To get somebody thought of something somewhere, just use theirs. You either make the Letamok and the Dotol literally the Transformers ant guy, Inferno, just a bunch of him, or Antigone, the other ant, or you make them some sort of insect biped thing. Yeah, but not the alien from Aliens and Prometheus, even though I kept mentioning that. There's a lot of those, but we don't want to do an H.R. Giger, like, acid-spitting alien. That doesn't make sense. That would be stupid. Greys, though, we could do Greys. Yeah. We're not that good at 3D modeling, for one thing, so it's not going to look right. Either you fake it and you just say, okay, these Star Trek figurines that are aliens and things, yeah, they're going to represent, we have a few of those, they're going to represent the aliens in the story. Alien Star Trek figures. They just are, because we don't have other ones. Yeah, because we have those and we don't have other ones. So here, these Kardashian guys, they're the autonomous. The insect ones are Borg or something. Something like that. The Vulcans are the Cohnirri. But sure, why not? But yeah, just because they don't have the figures. Blah. The third act is over 270 pages. That's as a script. That is huge. That is 270 minutes, roughly. Why would the third movie be so long? Well, you could. Yeah, there's clearly in the DNA of this clearly another movie toward the end here. It's a 4-act play instead of a 3-act play. Is the thing. Even though it played off originally as, it's odd. It played off originally as 300 pages, but when it chops it up, it's more like it's 400 pages if you extend various things that are going on. And as for the other books after it, I think this is going to be a son of a bitch to make. Just the first book. Don't worry about the other ones. Because just the first book is going to be an toil, just because it's not. We have to have the figures, and the ships are going to be probably just Starship location ships, because you can't possibly make the ships or assets from the net, because that are freeware, because you can't. Their universe is completely different, which was one reason why you could just say it's a story in the Star Trek universe, but it's not Star Trek. It's one of the Earth-like planets that was Federation influenced. You could say that, and that way you can use Starfleet ships in it, and you're gonna have them doing their thing. Giant bug aliens commanding ships. It might seem like Ender's Game and Starship Troopers, but it's not. They're actually intelligent bug creatures, and they have they have translators and they speak English, because they'd have to in the story, because otherwise it would take forever. If you actually did an alien contact thing with space aliens, they would almost have to have technology just to forward the story along. Which goes for the space missions and wherever they're going as well. It also goes for the kind of ridiculous idea that by the end of the first book, the bad guys have pretty much decimated the space forces to the point that our heroes from the story are actually in command rank, because everyone else is dead. That doesn't really lend itself to a sequel, which is why the second book is 10 years later. But still, even there, it's like really? Really? All of them are gone? There is a precedent for that, though. Japanese anime, of which this definitely is an homage to Star Blazers and Robotech, they did that kind of stuff. We're all, oh no, the alien forces, just millions of them destroyed the Earth and devastated. Yay, and we're the 70,000 survivors, so Rick Hunter is the admiral of the ship. He wouldn't be. There would be other people that would outrank him, but sure, why not? Why not make him the admiral of the ship at the end? The other stories in the series are definitely go off in other directions. It is a series, more so than it is a novel. It's a hyper condensed series, originally called Distant Cousins, and it's been condensed into this one book. And Distant planets and distant journeys. Distant planets is in the middle, as the other books, and then distant journeys is the last 4 books, the last 3.5 books. Somewhere in the middle is distant planets with the Slayton's children and stuff. So you have it's generational, like Star Blazer, like Star Trek in a sense. Yes, it's Star Trek as well. It's as long as it doesn't take itself too seriously, as long as it's not a Snyderverse type of thing, where all these cheesy lines I've written about this rebel planet or this superhero, I think they're really badass lines, and they're not. Turns out they're cheesy. In this version, clearly, the characters are not all that serious about it. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, I said a cheesy line. One of them even comments in the story, why don't we call this the Cass and his family Robinson or something? And the other guy's all, that's stupid. He says it right to the camera. Don't call it that. Which is funny. It's like, yeah, so they acknowledge that their story is self-effacing and dumb. but yes, so that's a dumb idea. Do that. Yeah, if they have similar technology to the Federation, their planet does, and so do the aliens. They have similar technology to them. The later versions of the story make it possible to rewrite. Incidentally, there are scammers, even today, scammers on the phone going like, oh, your Distant Destinies book, the first one into a of course they're lying. Originally Distant Cousins, Distant Destinies was Author House, and we left Author House in 2014. It was for about 10 years. It didn't make any money. So the scammers that are online, apparently they got a hold of the ISBN name, and they think they can somehow milk me for money. Somehow it's not going to work because the book didn't make any money. Why would I want to market the original story series that didn't make any money? I wrote the series, but I did not intended to make money. But there's no way anybody's going to make a book or a movie out of this unless I do. I'm in control of it. It's my story. I will do it. No. Mark Scar's creative consultant, of course. But he's off in Boston right now on some kind of furlough. Anyway, so we have Cohnirri Space 3 of book 1. It should be 4, but it's 3. It's several discrete little stories going on. There's like a pre-ultimate contact thing. All of the stuff that's earlier in the early 2380s is there somehow their parents of these young officers, and then the last 3 stories are them, the young officers. So yeah, if you take it like it's an anime, and it's not taking itself terribly seriously, anime, sci-fi, fantasy, sure, why not? They're not really a military; they're pretending to be. They're not really defeating the bad guys. The bad guys are kind of defeating themselves. In the final analysis of the final book, in book 1, the butt-kicking alien group is defeated from within by members of its own party, which show up and decide that they want to take over. After they realize they can't take the whole Earth, there's billions of people there. They try to land on the Earth, and the Earth humans just, they blow them up because they don't want them around. Which is probably on Mark's cards, that addition to that story from back in the day. Yeah, it's like, how would they do that? They often don't address that in alien invasion movies. It's like, what would happen if the humans were just so ruthless? They saw the alien motherships coming down and just blew them out of the sky. Said, oh, new targets. This is fun. Yeah, I don't know if that gives away the ending or not, but it's clearly, it's the guy, a warrior spirit of the samurai. It's kind of what's going on. They have samurai warrior spirit. But not like World War II kind of spirit. No, not that version. It's part 2. It's part 2. Yeah. All the main characters kind of end where they're supposed to, and hint that at the next stories to come. At the end of the book, the story, the Cassins and the Dentons and whatnot. I said earlier in the commentary that Beth Cassins is probably based on Sandra Yada from Jung Swan, but only a little bit in the sense that she's about the same size. She's not very imposing, but she's imposing. She's about the same size. But yeah, but yes, yeah. There's no such thing as a Napoleon complex. That's kind of a made-up net meme thing. Napoleon wasn't exceptionally short. It was detractors after the fact that were like, oh, Napoleon was a little guy. No, he's about the same size as everyone else back then. They weren't very tall. That wasn't it. That was his detractors afterward, like 50 years later, that were all, he was short. Ha ha ha. They're just being obnoxious. Stuck. Napoleon complex. Yeah, so you have, yeah, that kind of thing. You have a girl. You have, it's very topical, oddly enough. The story it has an insane group of rogues and stuff, and it has goofy political guys that want power. It has narcissistic a-hole bad guys that want power, and some of them are rich. Yeah, it's very topical. It doesn't intend to be, but it's extremely topical. It's right there. It's like, oh no. So, yeah. Probably what you want to do is, instead of a 3-hour or 4-hour mini-series where each one of them is 3 hours long, that's too much. Make it a season. One season, 10 episodes. Maybe 8 to 10 episodes. Make it one season of stories for this first book. One season of story. That way you can flesh out the world building and all that. Say this is a season of stories beginning this fall. Yeah. So that's awesome. That is yeah. Cohnirri Space. A quick update this evening on the set of Cohnirri Space. Starship Locations. Cohnirri presents Cohnirri Space. Original fan film. Little Star Trek-like, so it's Starship Locations. Yeah, and they have the rights to do the cousin story. Yeah. And the Starcrackers, which they kind of used from already. Yeah, I don't think we're doing any of the Starcracker stuff unless March Cards really wants to have me do some Starcrackers. I'll do some Starcrackers. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Cohnirri Space makes more sense. It's more accessible. It's more... It's more straight up sci-fi like Star Trek would be. Easy to pull off with the characters. The only caveat might be in that for finding the action figures that would be playing the bug people, the lizard people, mantis people, the ant people, and stuff like that. Fortunately, it's Halloween season. I do think we're going to be able to find some stuff. But yeah, they're bug people. They're kind of their own thing. So how do you do that? Hopefully, we can find some kind of and of course the cat guy. Well, there were some name changes from the original novels. It was essential that some of them be changed. Since the novels were published, there was some character names that were confusing. Harold has been changed to Maze, and Yunsol has been changed to Orange Claw, because Yunsol is also the name of a Korean pop band, pop singer person, and we did not know that. We can't use that character. That's the last character from the original OG story that wasn't changed. Yunsol, no, use something else. So we gave him the generic Americanized name that kind of sounds Native American, Orange Claw. The cat guy. So use Star Trek Playmates figures for the characters, and you can get bug creatures and things like that that are a little bigger, or some other action figures. Paint them up. No need to go all out with that, because also the ships would be no need to go all with that. Yeah, you have. Yeah, I mean, you could make new models, but you don't have to use our existing fleet of models and stuff like that. I mentioned that the spaceship, spaceships in it are too big anyway, and that the idea of them eventually having a miles-long battleship SDF-1 type thing, pole ship thing at the end is in the story, but it's ludicrous. It gets increasingly ludicrous. If you were to go on to do book 2 and book 3, you would find it going increasingly ludicrous until eventually book 7, where they punch a hole in the universe and staring back at them as a visage of God. They do that in book 7. We're not going to go there. Yes, so we have basically a story series that is as noted and modern enough that it's out there. And the name we can keep. The name is only found in those books on the net. Also, it's funny that some of them go to another person who is not related to Mark Scardzeri. Because Amazon is weird, and it's found another Jaeger who is not him, and giving him credit for the stories he didn't write there, just like for the brown ones as well. It's somebody else. There's somebody else. Yeah. So apparently, but the Jaeger one is about like weird metaphysical stuff, and social science, whereas the brown one is about werewolves and things. I've never written about werewolves that I know. I don't think so. Not published them anyway. Yeah, I don't have anything about that. But it's funny. Yeah. So. But we do get fake phone calls every now and then from people with strange names that want to market distant cousins and Blessings Deferred. Even though Destiny's Blessings Deferred didn't sell. Blessings Deferred did sell a little bit, though. They sold about 40 copies to relatives. So it did break even. It broke even. I'm assuming the scammers hope to... it's on some kind of mailing list. And also on a fake mailing list for Goodreads. I doubt that Goodreads has actually read my books. I don't know why it's on there. But they tried to jack up the price, even though it's out of print. And a couple of years ago, to go on there and say like it's out of print. Don't believe the scammers raising the price because it's out of print. There are no copies of it. There are 6 copies of Distant Cousins, the original book known to exist. I have them. They're in the there are about 6 copies left of Grandma's book too, and I have them. Most of them are the bad printing that had to be recalled on both of them actually. So yeah, I have those. No one else is going to get those. So this is a Cohnirri Space, and that over there is 11 50-minute episodes of the miniseries, comprising book 1. So that's enough. That's 11 months. That's almost a year right there. Yeah, don't do any more than book 1. See whether it takes off like gangbusters. If it does, then 2025 will consider book 2, later on, like 2025 book 2. But yeah, don't overdo it and oversell it. There's no point in that. But yeah, there's one way to market your story in your book is to do it yourself and put it out yourself. Using Playmates figures, of course, that are already copyrighted Star Trek figures and so on, whatever. Will automatically make it a Star Trek thing anyway, because you're using those figures. And if you use figures from other toy lines as well, you're automatically kind of saying, okay, I'm going to use these figures and I'm going to just do it. Because it's like a proof of concept more so than a story. and that's fine. Proof of concept is perfectly fine. And I also thought to mention Mark's Cards is in Boston. This is normally John Knight. I thought to mention that the Space of Final Frontier, the Planetcom, and the Trans Saga, the early one in the 80s, was also Space Lego, and the cars, with the space cars, car people in cars, and when I was younger, and they were the cars. I never imagined them as the cars were sentient. No, they were more like Knight Rider. They had AI, but they weren't sentient. And they were like Knight Rider crossed with Star Trek, and they had and the admiral would drive around in the car, and the captain would drive around in the car, and the lieutenants would be in the car. They drive around in a car. The Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars. Hot Wheels Heroes is very similar, which came later in the late 80s. I had nothing to do with it, but it was very similar to that. Yeah, so Space Lego was just, well, the early versions of Legos, you had the Space Lego set, City Lego set, the Fire Station set, and all that. Now they have every other kind of thing. They have licenses with Star Wars and Harry Potter and everything you can think of, they got a license for it. Except for Star Trek. I think Megu has Star Trek. Anyway, so yeah, they have, the Space Legos, they just had the space set, which was referenced in the Lego movie, The Spaceman. And we had the Space Lego and the nephew who's my age, David, he was the Frederick, that was the moniker on the internet, the early internet, the bulletin boards in the late 80s, that was Calicat, and he had so we had these like build your adventure role-playing game type of things. They still have them today, but they're different ones. There's sometimes you get the Vine Sauce people play. The Vine Sauce people playing them. Those are funny. It plays those build your adventure things. We did those back in the day for Apple computers. So yeah, we did those back then. Yeah, we had Apple II games. But yeah, not anymore. He went on to do other things, and I didn't end up doing program anything, but back then you could build your adventure, you could program the game. A bunch of those stories ended up the short stories of Space Time Eye. So if you go find that Calicat book series online, Space Time Eye has all of them in it. So you can go read through all the games translated into storybooks. This is one of them. This was Space the Final Frontier / Planetcom. It was one of the games, and you go in there, build your adventure, and it had Lego ships, the Adams ship and the David ship, the Adamson and the Davies. That's literally where those two ships come from. They were Lego ships in the 80s, and they were like flying around and stuff. And one of them resembled a shuttle, like a Star Trek shuttle. The other one resembled a big long cruiser thing. And the bad guys, they were literally the bad guys, like literally the bad guys. David's a little younger than me, so yeah, well, 20 months younger. So he's got like Lisa was 11 months younger, it was 20 months younger. So you have the 24 months younger. So you have the 2 years, almost 2 years. But yeah, you have So you have the. Yeah, they were at Valley Christian where we were at Pine Hill, so right across the street from me. They had the old stomping ground. Yeah, and he was on the trend. He was in the Sneak Storm footage. He's in there, in the background. Some of his stuff ended up in Trans Tech as well. Many years later, the Sunstreaker and his brother and Raj's brother thing, and that's one of his stories. The Thundercracker crashing into the base thing. That's one of his stories. Yeah, that kind of stuff. I think he went under some aliases out there on All Transformers Mush as well. And we probably inadvertently adapted at least one of his stories. So yeah. But yes, so in 2007 we did a sort of a reunion special thingy called Planetcom. I think we were able to download that. I think it is online. I'm not sure. I think it is online because there was no music in it. Using the Transformers Robotech sets. And that's an early Planetcom. It's an adaptation of the first 90 minutes of the first Planetcom book. and it's got the voice acting that in it. Or the character, the Admiral Adam and Admiral David save the Federation. and it got the seal of approval from my brother Robert, his father, who was like, "You really got David's voice down pat there." He came in and watched a couple of filmings of it. He was here hanging around when that happened. Almost thought he was up here. He's not. I was like, dang. But yeah, so the lovable rogues in the story and hackers and stuff are just supposed to be David, kind of, and Mike Slater from Pine Hill. And they weren't really hackers, but we thought we were all hackers because we were geek nerds. We weren't hackers. But yes. Looking back at this, doing this thing is 11 episodes. Yeah, that's a lot. A little more than 8. Usually we do 8. In a given 3-4 month period, we usually do 8. But here we got 11. And it's definitely possible. We just have to get the figures. And now the technology has caught up with us that we can do that. Didn't have that before. Not even 2 years ago. Didn't have that technology. Now we do. We put that technology in the story and say, oh, we want to do this and have this alien creature doing that or whatever. We can just put that in the story. See, we didn't have that technology before. It would be fake if we just drew pictures of a bug man and put the picture up on the screen. It's got to be a bug man. Somebody's got to be a bug man. It doesn't matter who it is, really. Maybe somebody will say, "Oh, that's a DC character." Well, that's all we found. So, or whatever, But yeah, or that's a Marvel character. Yeah. Oh well. We have what we have. It's a mecha character. A mecha character would make more sense. There's got to be some stuff out there. There has to be some stuff we can use for the critters. The ant guys, the Coleman, the bad guys. The ant dudes are different from the praying mantis dudes. The praying mantis dudes are more like the Totemus, kind of, but they're more like the Darkrai, I would say. They're the mantis, the Darkrai. The Litgrai are grays. They're just termite ant guys. They're grays. They're basically grays. Pretty much. But they're like humanoid versions of them. And then you have the Totemus. The other Totemus, who are more Velociraptor or Allosaurus, Calosauroid kind of thing. Later on, you have the forefather and the toolmaker ones, who are Neanderthal ape people and stuff. There's all kinds of weird stuff in the story. Yeah, the later books go off on a tangent. By the time you get to book 3, you've got Owen Cervantes controlling a planet ship thing that he steals from the Totemus. Not sure how he's able to do that, but I guess he has Q powers or something. Didn't think of that at the time, but he must have some kind of powers. He just convinces the aliens to give up their entire planet. He's just that, He's some kind of demigod or something. Then it makes sense, even though it doesn't really. But yeah, in this version, he's a young guy, and he's not really. This is his origin story, kind of. So he shows up. Also, we have heroic rogue Spanish people, even though we're not, but we have heroic Spanish people. Slater gets changed to Slayton, and he's been changed, race swapped. He's black. He wasn't black originally. He was a white kid with curly black hair. I think he became eventually a YouTuber like the Calicat Show did, but off to the side under could have sworn that he's Michael from Vinesauce or Vsauce, but maybe he's not. But I bet he is. It's just the same dude. It would be about the right age and everything. If it's not that dude, it's close, real close. Yeah. Yeah. So it's probably not. But if it was him, he would be commenting. If I commented on his channel, he'd be commenting, "Oh, I'm Mike Slater from Pine Hill. I'm now famous on YouTube." Like, no, I don't think he was that gregarious that would be him.